we're gonna be starting the point battle in about 20 minutes. So anyone who wants to join can use the code over in the top left. While we are waiting for this to begin, at the top of the hour, we are going to do a rare thing on the channel and play a speed duel. I wanted to go live just a little bit before the actual start of the event, as most of the time we have had players trying to join the event right after it started, so by starting a little bit earlier, things are a little bit easier to do. Best UR card. Let's see. I mean, Widespread Ruin is a UR from the bundle. Otherwise, maybe, overall, probably still Dragius. Though, some of the best decks aren't even using it. But mostly because of the skills. Or if you're asking about UR Dream Tickets for speed, that is a little bit tougher. And I'm not actually sure. Could you be a little bit more specific? Oh, and, so, forgot to turn on the little black bar. So it's easier to see the point battle room code. Secrets is fine. I actually don't know what Spellbook does. Or the view the top card of both players' decks. Okay. I think they're probably gonna try to get rid of the blue boy, so Crackdown makes sense. And this forces them to have another one in hand. And they might end up losing a card they didn't want. Welcome, Shoto. Cup of Ace. I mean, we just wait until they summon more monsters. So, Cocktail says it's draw power for Abyss Actor. Well, that was a really quick concession. Yeah, Ryga, we are just doing our dailies while we wait for the actual start of the event. If you want to join in the point battle, use the code on the top left, and we'll be getting started at 2 p.m. with the Rush Duel coverage. I figured I might as well do the dailies while we wait for that to start. And Shoto, I'm doing pretty well. Had a solid week, I think. Definitely haven't been uploading as much as a couple of weeks ago, but that is fine. I'll get back on it soon. And welcome Tomato. I have no idea what these cards do. Okay. They are searching for searchers. Makes sense. What is the point of the attribute manipulation? Wait, is this another searcher? That is so many. Alright, so it is terror. So they're able to summon an Ikelos. But I don't know what that does. Oh, it summons itself? No. Okay, so they are like dragon maids then. Where they have a second form. Fusion. Okay. Oh, so it is multi-attribute. That is neat. And then, so they can negate a monster effect. Okay. Oh, but it's gone now. Yeah, I did go ahead and unlock Sherry in the event. Sorry, I need a second to try to figure out what these cards do. So if this is destroyed, they bring back a card. So I'd really like to use Successor Soul on it. Is what I'm getting there. So, start with Melody. Send away the other one. And add the alternative and a Blue Eyes. Having a Spirit of White would have been really nice. For back row is quite a lot. I'm assuming these are going to be cards like Crackdown that make it a little bit difficult to actually find the lethal. Right, so they are immediately going into this, which is good. I have no idea what this monster does. Oh, they can I see. And the destroying that can bring out this one, which can then bring out another copy of that. So I don't think I am actually getting anywhere unless I go for Neo. And I don't think Neo actually wins me the game. Obviously, any kind of interruption will just end it. But I'm okay with that. I kind of just want to move on to the next game. Or realistically, there are only 10 minutes left, so I'll just head into the duel room after this one. They simply will not have anything. It's that easy. Enter the battle phase, and let's go. Obviously, they did indeed have something. Alright, so they are banishing the blue eyes. And then we can move on. Ending turn. We do have Treacherous, but we're not actually going to use it. They are still going in. Hopefully, they do find a lethal quickly. Also, I completely did not notice they activated a field spell on my side. Was that part of the trap? Okay, there it is. That's a pretty funny card. I actually really like it. And now that that is done, let's go ahead and see how the point battle room is looking. Also, I do need to send out another reminder. That way, nobody forgets to join. We've been averaging around 12 participants, so I'm hoping to see at least that many again today. And we are currently at 9. Hopefully a few people do shuffle in by the end. Otherwise, we might be going back down to just an hour for the point battle section. When there aren't that many members, things are like, there's no reason to play for super long periods of time if there aren't that many members in the room. I agree with Marcus. Now that we have Seal Array in the game, there's no problem with releasing Blue Eyes as a legend. It was a little bit of an issue if Thunder the Thunder was our only debuffer. So, room members are all the familiar faces. But hopefully a few more will join before the start. How have you all been? I know some of the players are in the chat. Yeah, Samurai, you can kind of look at the players in the room and figure out what decks are going to be represented. For sure. A lot of these players are known for specific decks. Shoto, do feel free to join. The point battle code should be on the screen. You have to join before the top of the hour, so there are only a few minutes left. Oh, Ryga, hope your move goes well. What is the occasion? Are you moving for a job, college, etc.? And welcome, Black Surge. Glad to hear you've been doing well. So it says 9, but we also do need to keep in mind that I am not playing. I am only commentating. So really, it's only 8 players. Paco was in there. Paco is Riv. Right there. And everyone is tied for first place. Interestingly, even though it is a rush duel room, it shows everybody's rank over in speed duels, which I feel is not a great representation of a player's rush level. Sorry, I zoned out. But I do think, we have plenty of strong players in the event today. Paco, has won an event before. Sora has won many. Gonchi, Sias has also done it. I think Gonchi has at least hit top cut. Tomato has won the single elimination events. Over in Quantum, Paco is a top 100 GRF player. Manarchist is pretty active. So it should be a tough set of competition. Let's go ahead and see if any matches have begun. No, I am not going to be battling. I am going to be commentating on the matches. Looks like we have immediately queued into one. Yeah, so, Manarchus is pretty good at the game. I know I run into them into King of Games a lot. I just don't have any tops off the top of my head. But I think they will definitely win one of these eventually. And we see they are on Hell Tuning Invasion, which is a good start. And I think it's totally possible that Manarchist has topped a Harrier tournament, and I just don't know which one. In any case, we see an Essel and an immediate concession. It's not quite lethal, but in the point battle, getting into another game is probably the right choice. There is a limited amount of time, and you are very unlikely to win after taking 4,800 damage. Okay, so game number 2. We see Sora is on an archive skill. but we still don't actually know what. Okay, and it is just harpies. With 2 copies of the middle piece, a card is going to be flipping up. And destroying Sword and Shield is actually huge, as this is a card even more devastating than Widespread Ruin when utilized against a harpy. And we actually see a double Strange Cat opener. Probably good to get them out of the way early, though it definitely is rough being under half life points 1 turn into the game. Magical Stream, going to remove the only back row card available. A Shield and Sword would be huge, and it is flipped up. Seven's Axel Vote is certainly capable of putting out 6,000 damage in 1 turn, which in a Magician plus any level will easily break through that wall. Even a 3600 Magician on its own would be enough, and we currently see 3 attributes. They mill the 4th, but they are just a few points short. Light Sorcerer is going to secure the game, and that is 2 incredibly quick games to start off this event. I feel like there was a pretty significant delay at the start of the turn, but I suppose it was just calculating the lethal line. Echo versus Shoto. Shoto is indeed on a Psychic deck. Prima Katana backed by a face down. Though the Telepathic Agent is a little bit vulnerable. Echo using Blue Medicine. With an Archive skill, we don't actually know what they are running, but the Blue Medicine doesn't really help. I would say some kind of Psychic deck. And Reset Runner is Cyberse. So I'm even more confused now. But they actually draw a full Yggdrago without using an Yggdrago skill. That should help them quite a bit. Even though a maximum monster requires 3 different pieces, Prima Katana is only going to gain 300 attack, as it only counts as 1 monster on board. And that makes outing the monster a little bit more difficult for a Psychic deck than it otherwise should be. We do have the Ramon pick plus the skill. So expect a Prima Katana into Esperade to clear out Yggdrago, though they will be leaving their own life points pretty low to do this. Alright, and use your Performer down to just 1,200. A Giftarist could end the game, as it's able to boost itself up to exactly 3,200. But it would have needed to be a Guitarist, plus Psychic plus Esperade turn. If they are summoning the Prima Katana, I don't think they have the resources to do so. Unless they get really wild with Roman Pick. Alright, Folder Blitz. Oh, I missed it. They didn't have the skill trigger, but they only drew one card for turn, so they don't even have the Esperade. Shoto, of course, is not going to gain nearly enough attack. And I guess that is going to end the game. Echo probably getting a little bit lucky to draw that many pieces that quickly. But it works out and they claim a win. And, looks like Paco is probably on Resonance as expected. They did it quite well with it last week. And of course, we see Thunder on the other side. Most players are on the decks they are most familiar with. Though I think Sora was trying out something a little bit different than usual. And we did see Manarchist dropping Thunder for Hell Tuning Invasion. Dragonic Slayer and Merchant getting in for a 3800 turn 1. And we see the concession right away. Let's go to Tomato versus Manarchist. And Manarchist is ending on a lone heavy metal in attack mode. Usually this is an incredibly risky play, but it pays off. Tomato is unable to find a boss monster of their own. And we see a Kobold and Dealer. What could the final card in hand be? It has to be a high level monster that wasn't able to deal with heavy metal. So I'm guessing it is a Seven's Road Witch. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. Unless it is... Oh, and there we go. We see Witch, and it is Seven's Axel Road. Seven's Magician coming out. Widespread Villain taking out the heavy metal, meaning this invasion is going down regardless of Manarchist's set card. Alright, enjoy your day. Raiga. We see the counter. Widespread Ruin. But Tomato is still getting in for significant damage. We are expecting a King's Majesty to show up at some point. Babysitter Goat already in the graveyard. Manarchist fails to find a high-level monster, but Tomato fails to find any Torna, which is unfortunate, as flipping over this Babysitter Goat would have been huge. We see Currybot generating advantage. Invasion is going to clear out this entire board. But the question is, do they have Shadow Buyer? Looks like they don't. As expected though, Tomato is going to flip King's Majesty and get another chance to out this board. Cyclone number 1 and number 2. Getting rid of 2 different trap cards before reducing the invasion to 0. This is a pretty good start. Here comes the Witch, and I am expecting the final 7-Zone Magician to make an appearance. This is lethal. Unless they have another trap. And Manarchist comes in with the King's Majesty. Attack order did not matter. Manarchist down to 700. A Shadow Buyer plus invasion turn is only 3,500. And a Heavy Metal is under 2,500 damage as well. So, I think Tomato is pretty likely to win this. Unless Manarchist has drawn another trap. There is one thing to note though, and that is that all 3 7-Zone Magicians are gone. As are all 3 7-Zone Witch. Do they have anything that can beat Invasion? Talisman Accelerate is certainly a great draw. Any 3 low-level monsters should be able to get over this and finish the game. And with all of those high-level monsters already in the graveyard, it is all but guaranteed. We see a Light Sorcerer Sanctity, and the invasion is down to just 300 attack. Tomato finishes the game. Manarchist says they've played Tomato 5 times in a row. That is rough. One thing that I have seen Japanese point battles do is implement a rule where if a player loses a game, they aren't able to queue for a minute to kind of try to prevent the repeat battles. I don't know how we can perfectly regulate that outside of courtesy, but it might be worth something. It might be worth trying if you're trying to find different opponents. Alright, so we see 3 copies of Essel, but I don't think they actually choose to use any of them. They already have a boss monster set up for Platypus, and they have the normal monsters as well. So there's not really anything they need to mill with those Essels. Speedy Performer, boosting up Faithbird, though I am definitely expecting them to tribute it off. Alright, we see 2 different Harpies. And even a Widespread Ruin is not able to stop these attacks. Falco even manages to keep a card in hand, preventing any particularly damaging piercing. However, the Shield and Sword spell card allows the entire board to pierce. 2800 plus 15 would be game. And they have it. Falco falls to the power of the legend spell. Tomato starts off with a tribute set. Almost certainly the monster is only going to have 1,000 defense, but Manarchus does not seem to try to break through. Even a card like Palace Gargoyle would have been able to do so. Magician's Valkyria boosted to 2,400. And with a pretty powerful board, this should have little problem breaking through. Unfortunately, the Kobold runs right into a Babysitter Goat. So, the Rogue of Archfiend could have indeed cleared the Witch, but if there are other monsters for Babysitter Goat and Currybot, I understand not wanting to do that. Invasion backed by 3 back row, but none of it matters when Widespread Ruin destroys the monster. That said, we know Widespread Ruin of Manarchists or a copy of the Guard could still stop an attack. With an empty board though, failing to find a trap card would be lethal. The Guard blocks the first attack, which implies to me that Manarchus does have another way to stop the Magician, and it is the Widespread Ruin. Both players have used the Widespread Ruin already, so Tomato's only line of defense is probably finding the copy of King's Majesty. We see shield and sword. Plus Torna, 39 and 16 is exact lethal. And Tomato finds the final attribute off the top. However, the Guard once again stopping Tomato from getting in. Manarchus down to 3,100. But there is no low-level monster, no defense position monster, which means a heavy metal is the one making a play. This allows Manarchus to swing in without using their skill, and the 2 low-level monsters are swinging in for lethal damage. Tomato says they feel robbed. That was an unfortunate end to the game, for sure. Let's see how players are doing. Paco in first with a clean 3,000 points. Tomato Swords and Manarchist, despite fighting each other so many times, appear to be close to tied with 1,300 and 1,400 points respectively. Yeah, with only 10 players in the room. If you immediately re-queue after finishing a game, you are very likely to find the same opponent. So that is probably the next thing we will try to implement. Is some kind of measure to deal with that. Let's do one more game, and then I do need to go grab some water. We see Paco is landing a Dragius. Milling the Twin-Edged Dragon is fine, as they already have 4 attacks on the board. All they need to do is not whiff with this Slugger, and they do it. Dodging the Essel that would have blocked all of the damage coming in this turn. We see a Surge Bolt Lizard, certainly going to be attributed off. And if no trap card was activated last turn, I think we can expect a Talismanic Seal Array to be face down. But they don't activate anything. Could it be a bunch of dead spell trap removal? Pago has managed to find both sports dragons and a second Dragius early into the game. But they don't seem to have anything to deal with the rest of the board. They ignore the Stormbolt Destroyer to get in for more damage. This does seem reasonable to me. As long as the trap card is able to do something. And we know that Sias is playing Cyclone, so they weren't able to destroy the back row. But they also didn't find a boss monster, leaving them unable to clear Dragius. And I think this has to be game. Interestingly, we have still seen no Magnum Overlord. It is a deck that I think is pretty good, but players have largely stopped playing it. With that said, I'm gonna click spectate on the next match. However, I'm going to be AFK for a minute grabbing water. We will be right back. We are back. Okay. And it looks like it is a pretty close battle. However, Gonchi has the initiative, and Sora concedes. We see Tomato and Manacus are fighting once again. So let's go ahead and view it for the third time. Oh, and it is now 7. I mean, honestly, while it may not be a great, thing to fight someone 7 times in a row for a tournament purpose, I think Tomato and Manacus are both great practice partners. So, getting a lot of the repetitions in could be a good thing. It all depends on how you look at it. Turn to the Wind Weaver, discarding another copy of itself. most players are only on 2. And that means without a Steel Array activation, Manargus should be able to set 3 later in the game, as long as they are able to deal with the 1 Torna on board now. We see the Hell Tuning Invasion. And a heavy metal does represent an additional 300 damage over an invasion here. Oh, but we see the Shadowbuyer come down after the skill. That is a mistake, since it didn't get set to level 5 prior to using its effect. It's not able to reach level 7, and it won't be able to attack. If they had it in hand, it absolutely should have been summoned. Manargus misses out on 1200 damage. But will it actually come back to bite them? Without a Shield and Sword activation, maybe not. We do see a 600 debuff from Light Sorcerer of Sanctity. Since Axel Road, boosting the Valkyria. And it is turn 4, allowing for a Magician Surge. But Tomato already has it in hand, which discarding card to summon the one and only 7-Zone Magician, ditching the Protective Trap, King's Majesty. And it looks like Manargus is going to have their own Majesty to stop this. Do they also have the Widespread Ruin, though? Yeah, Tomato fails to play around the Recital here. The 7-Zone Magician should have been the one to take out the Heavy Metal. There were no direct attacks happening that turn. So you didn't need to play around the guard after the King's Majesty was activated. You only had 2 attacks left. It's only a couple hundred points of damage. Given that there were only 3 attributes in the grave. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Wait. No. Because Witch was negated, and they had Heavy Metal and Shadowbuyer. So they had Shadowbuyer and Heavy Metal, and you had already attacked with the Witch. So there was only the Magician and the Valkyria left, and they had 2 monsters. So we see Manargus does land a Shadowbuyer this time. Invasion is going to end the game. It ultimately does not matter. We're talking like 300 points of damage. So not something to get fussed up about at all. Especially when the attacks weren't really going through anyway. 2 negates in a single turn is a power play. we see Paco opening with the Draconic Slayer. Other players would choose to keep it in hand, but against a Harpy player specifically, you probably don't want to get your low attack monsters flipped up, especially if you do have a trap card. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Paco does, and they are taking a huge amount of damage. Shield and Sword is going to do some work, but without a Sports Dragon play, they are looking for a Triad Drago, but they actually discard the Triad Drago for Phoenix Dragon. They are going to be able to pop the face down card, but things are looking a little bit rough for Paco anyway. Oh, well, actually, they get a new face-down card. I was going to say, since we know they didn't Widespread Ruin on the first turn, that they were at a disadvantage. But Paco draws nothing. And now, Paco is hugely favored to win the game, gaining additional time to draw into Widespread Ruin. Draconic Slayer is going to destroy those face-down cards, and with a Twin-Edged Dragon, unless Paco has a trap, the game ends with a direct Slayer attack. Definitely a powerful and swingy deck. Paco is going to need to flip over a Recital, as I don't think there are any Harvey players running the guard. You already have your grave emptied by so many other means. And it is not found. Paco claims another win. And it looks like the curse has been broken. Tomato and Manarchist find separate opponents. Let's go ahead and watch the 7th Axel Road. Oh, and Paco mentions the Recital wouldn't have worked either, because Slayer swung in over the monster. Yeah, that is a pretty good point. I simply believed that you would misplay, as I am clearly such a highly superior Resonance player that I forgot. Alright, we see the Kobold into the Witch, and it is turn 4, so the Magician is guaranteed, whether they have drawn it or not. And drawing it naturally, of course, is better, as being able to use the search on a future turn can influence the game. Seems like a good attack order to me, and all 3 go through. Well, you see, Paco, they had 2,200 life points, so the 2,300 Slayer was lethal, allowing you to play around the Recital. But 2,800 is a bigger number, and don't you want to hit them with a big number? Clearly, you should attack with the level 7 Resonance, or the level 7 Slayer first, cause it's cooler. Alright, so we see the lightning trigger, and Piercing Samurai is going to get in for the full piercing damage. Talismanic Seal Array, debuffing the Magician, almost certainly, and that is a full board clear, though it shouldn't be a lethal one. 1200, 15, and 8. Tomato probably needs to find lethal or at least some protection this turn. The King's Majesty is set up, but finding a way to get a bunch of trap cards and a strong board at the same time is a challenge. Seven's Axel Road is one of the few decks in the game not running any actual advantage generating cards. We have the kobolds and the dealers to cycle, but very little in the way of actual engines. No Seahorse Carriers, no Pakachu. Which, in the Magician, is technically a card save. But it is still a 1, 2, 3, 4 card combo. So the question is this lethal? We did see a debuff from... Oh, I think Tomato missed lethal. But maybe not. Okay, so Light Sorcerer of Sanctity, how much did they have at the start? So they were at 3,500. If they debuffed the... Oh, would they have had 100? No. Well, okay, so they would have given up on the 300 damage from Light Sorcerer. But they could have swung in for a ton of damage with the Magician into the... If they swung into the 2 low levels with their big monsters, I think it would have been lethal. They might have needed to use like the Light Sorcerer's Sanctity to debuff the non-2400. But I'm not 100% sure. They might have done the math and made the play because they already did it. Trying to think. 2,800 into the 1,200 is 16. And then it's a 1,500 into a 36. So... yeah, if they had at least a 3,600 Magician. And Faga says it could have been a trap card that could have done it anyway. Alright, speaking of trap cards, Gonchi loses the very purple Talismanic Seal Ray to a Ghost Cyclone. However, Magician's Valkyria is going to protect. It is only turn 3, so we don't get the effect of Seven's Axel Road to search out a Magician, but I am expecting them to already have it in hand if they are summoning the Witch. Tossing away a cat seems pretty reasonable. But Widespread Ruin is going to destroy the Magician. Gonchi gets in for a little bit over 2,000 damage and maintains a board of 2 1,600 monsters, forcing Fako to find some tributes to get over it. We see a Tyhone into a double Harpy Lady Sisters. Hysteric Force will provide immunity to Widespread Ruin as long as the Harpy Lady Sisters also buffs the left side. And now all 3 monsters are above 1,600 and a Recital won't be able to stop the attacks. Gonchi down to just 2,100. Mystic Dealer. But it doesn't look like they are going to be using the effect. Essel is milling something, presumably setting up a Talismanic Seal away. For the future. No, simply getting more attributes in the graveyard. And it pays off with a 3,900 Seven's Road Magician getting in for exact lethal. I'm pretty sure the Fire Golem Mill was required, and possibly even the Torna. An incredible lethal line was discovered and followed up on. So we should have Thunder versus Rebels. A full set 5 is usually a pretty good way to start this game, especially against a Rebel player. You would rather have 3 back row 2 monsters, as the invasion is fairly likely to just blow up your board. That being said, we do see a rogue of Archfiend, meaning the White Side of Ruin is not going to be doing anything this turn. That said, I think the White Side of Ruin would have been a fairly low risk here, so I might have used the Shadow Buyer instead. Tributing off the Rogue of Archfiend and then getting in for the 1200, even if they have the White Side of Ruin. As you can see, by switching the invasion to defense mode, it was as if it got destroyed by a card effect anyway, as they just pierce right over it when Manacus has no cards in hand. Unfortunately, Manacus draws into 3 back row, but we do know they are running a ton of trap cards, so maybe it's not as unfortunate as we thought. But they go ahead and concede. They don't have 3 full ways to stop these attacks. I don't think we have seen Echo play in a while, so let's go ahead and view this game. We see a red medicine pass. That seems pretty dangerous. I'm guessing Echo has 2 of the 3 maximum pieces in hand and just doesn't want to play them down. But it is also possible that they just bricked. Only 700 life remaining. Blue medicine is not going to do it. And at this point, the set monsters are a little bit too late. Trigger Drago is going to get in for game. Oh, and it turns out they're actually on 2 different maximum monsters. During the last time we spectated, we did not see the Magnum Overlord pieces. Only a Drago. Unfortunately, we aren't going to be able to watch the Tomato Swords duel. So there is only a singular game going on at the moment. And Falco is up first. Let's see what they pull out. Alright, setting 4 is a respectable play, but Torn of the Windweaver is going to punish it. Or not. They don't even attack, in fear of a Wise Bit of Ruin, presumably. This does make me think they do have something along the lines of a recital. Or they just really don't want to risk the Wise Bit of Ruin. Shield and Sword is going to be able to clear that one. But they have 3 2100 monsters. Strikeforce says, try to do just the Harpies or Seven's Road, but it doesn't work. Yep, I am interested. Do you have the full, like, Seven's Road Axel deck? Without the 3 Magician and 3 Witch, it is a lot more difficult to play. I do think Harpies are actually pretty budget-friendly, though. That's actually what I used to get King of Games this month. And it was a very budget-friendly build. Very few spell and trap cards. Alright, we see a Faith Bird boosted above the Seven's Road Witch. Then Harpy Lady Sisters is going to be able to boost past the 7-Zone Magician, either with his own effect or Hysteric Force. Yeah, all of the players that you are facing, Shoto, are top players. Either having tournament wins, top 100s in the Go Havash Festival, or, just a lot of activity in dedicated Discord servers to improving. So they are tough matches. But it should hopefully be a pretty good learning experience. And as always, if you don't have to give up at all. If you're having fun, keep on playing. And if you ever want help with decks, there are several Discord servers that I'm sure would be willing to offer assistance. We see Shield and Sword activated at the right time. The Magician's Valkyria does have extra defense, and I believe the Witch was on board from last turn. The Witch is at a really awkward 1400 attack. I've never seen it be blue, but also lower than the original attack before. Which is a quirk of the way Shield and Sword works. But it's just a cursed image in my mind. Talismanic Seal Array debuffing the Faith Bird. And this should be a lethal push, barring a trap card. We do see, of course, plenty of things face down. The Sword and Shield is not going to be able to stop the attack, as 7-Zone Magician has buffed way higher and even has more original defense than Piercing Samurai. And it looks like that is not enough. Fako goes down. We are a bit over halfway through the event. Let's go ahead and see how things are going. Paco has fallen from 1st to 4th, but they have gained 4,000 points, or 1,000 points since the last time we checked. Other players, though, have managed to get a little bit higher than them. We see Tomato and Manarchist both around the middle of the pack, which makes sense if you're fighting each other all the time, and it is relatively even. It is going to be hard for either player to really break through. Surprisingly, we see Sora in 8th. Though we do know that Sora was playing a little bit different of a deck today. And I think at some point they probably stopped queuing. And we see the rematch of the century. Tomato and Renarchist have found each other once again. We see an Essel summoning a heavy metal. And the invasion is not going to be able to use the effect, as Essel is not a fiend monster. That said, this is still plenty of damage. Sun Magician coming onto the board. A solid 600 debuff, followed by a Talismanic Seal Array. Probably also onto the heavy metal, as it'll get an extra 200. Sun Magician clears, and Manarchist is taking the full brunt of these attacks. Pretty interesting to not see the face down activated though. We know Manacus is running a ton of trap cards. So presumably it's something like something like a recital or a guard that they would rather save for later, rather than using it on a measly 1200 attack point monster. Invasion gets in, and Tomato is down to just 600 life points. Only a single activation of Light Sorcerer Sanctity is allowed, even though they have drawn 2 copies. Invasion down to 1400. Can't play around both Recital and Guard. But they do play around the Recital successfully. They probably knew from a previous turn when the Hourglass lit up. Unfortunately, all Manacus needs to do is find any boss monster, and Tomato's remaining 300 life points are going down. It theoretically could have been a bluff. We did not see the tribute summon. Oh, but we did see a Shadow Buyer, and I think they flipped up a Goat. And Goat is not protected by the Valkyria, meaning it is not going to be, meaning they didn't even need a boss monster if the Shadow Buyer was able to swing in. We see a Yggdrago head and a right side. Unfortunately, that is probably not going to hold up to the Harpy Ladies coming down. Interesting. Falco only draws a single monster. A reset runner can mill the deck for an Attribute Hydron. We see Sigurd State Soul, inflicting a little bit of burn damage. And it is actually big enough to clear over the Harpies as well. They don't summon the Dark Femtron though, missing out on 1500 damage. Trick Pigeon is going to recycle that boss monster. And with 2 of them on board, the Barrier or Widespread Ruin are not going to be able to stop these from going in. 3100 is just enough. But a Music Princess's Recital would be able to put an end to Falco's turn. It is only a copy of the Barrier. Had it been a 2600 Harpy Lady Sisters, this would have been perfect. But thanks to the middle pieces of fact, it is not enough. And this puts Todoroki in a position where they need to draw into the maximum monster in order to win this turn. If they fail to find the full maximum, I think it's very easy for them to take 700 damage on the next turn. Oh, and thank you for the follow, GV Logger. Or G Vlogger. I'm actually not sure. We see Pair Production, which I think is a debuff spell. No, it's an attack gain spell. I mean, is a pretty significant buff. However, the cost is quite high. And it looks like they are keeping a weak monster on board going into the next turn. Yeah, Shoto is participating in the event. We see a speedy performer. Though I think this is a little bit of showboating. In a point battle, you want to finish the games where you have guaranteed lethal as fast as possible. This could come back to bite Fako if they get in one fewer game over the course of the event. Alright, let's take a look at Tomato versus Echo. Alright, we see a copy of the barrier from Echo. Presumably this is going to be a 1400 defender. It is not. They simply wanted to recycle their maximum piece. Blue medicine gaining a little bit of extra life. But are all of those medicines going to be able to do anything at the end of the day? It might keep them around for an extra turn. 8200 is an impressive amount of life points, but they do still need to somehow find an entire maximum monster to do much of anything, from what I can tell with their deck build. They set 3 and keep 2 around. If Tomato doesn't find a Torn of the Windweaver, they might just be able to stall things out until they get the card they want. But Tomato immediately drops a Torna, not giving Echo the chance to stabilize. Widespread of everyone, mill to the graveyard, though it doesn't seem that important for this matchup. And now, Echo is only able to set 2 monsters, and with one of them being flipped up by the Torna, this game is probably over. Alright, and the point battle has just crossed the 1 hour mark. We are now 2/3 of the way through. And it looks like a lot of the players have actually stopped. Sora hasn't been queuing for a while. Paco is trying to secure 3rd place with the 4K. So even with only no, Paco. These are an hour and a half. It says it right there, in the room. And in the announcements. So apparently Paco had probably stopped playing, assuming it was only an hour long, and that 4,000 was, a secured, guaranteed top 4. I mean, it still might be. And with the declining number of entrants, I definitely am considering cutting it back down to an hour again. I know after the first event, which was only an hour long, players did say it felt a little bit short. But, it is what it is. If there aren't enough players to really support the room, going on for longer than that, then we can adjust it based on the number of entrants. I'm thinking like 10 players We're at minimum of an hour, and then at like 16 players, we make it 90 minutes. Maybe like 20 to 25 players, we go to 2 hours. Welcome, Yugi. So this one has already started, and unfortunately, Duel Links does not let players join in after the start of the event. However, if you do want to participate in the events in the future, they are the same time every week. And I can send you a Discord invite to the server that is running them. Alright, and there is the Discord link for Yugi. Alright, and back to the game. Tomato has a pretty strong board, but Fako could punch through quite easily here. We see a 7-zone mage debuffing by 400. And a second one is going to get in for a huge debuff as the 7-zone magician is actually on board. However, King's Majesty stops the attack, but that isn't enough when the Magician's Valkyria offers exact lethal against 7's Road Magician. And Paco has decided to throw their hat back in the ring. Could be a risky decision. If they lose this battle, they're down to just 3,000 points and will easily fall out of the top 4. Try a Drago and Merchant into Slayer. This is going to destroy the back row, and Manarchus is on a very back row heavy variant of Royal Rebels, so Resonance might be a bad matchup, as they will be much more likely to be unable to actually establish a strong board, and the Slayer will pop the defenses that they try to set up. Monster Reincarnation, grabbing a low level monster while ditching the King's Majesty. King's Majesty, of course, not going to do anything against a Resonance deck that is able to pop it. Heavy Metal is coming in, and they need to play it this way in order to actually be able to summon another monster. But they don't discard anything. If this was another high-level monster, they could have theoretically tried to set up the Heavy Metal to pop the Dragonic Slayer and then swing into the Tremendous Dragon for significantly more damage. But keeping a boss monster in hand is not a bad idea either. I probably would have gotten more aggressive with it though. Because that's 3,800 damage, and then an invasion line would be lethal later. On the other hand, if you've already gone through Reincarnation and 2 boss monsters, you do have a pretty good chance of bricking, and you are running against a Resonance deck, which is running a couple of Dragius and 3 Twin-Edged Dragon to beat through your set 3 board. It's a tough decision either way, but I think the Rebel deck has to play the beatdown. Like, in a prolonged situation, the Slayers are just gonna get too much value. And Manarchus concedes, probably drawing into not a playable hand. Either too much back row, or just more bosses. And Paco with another win, going up to 5,000 points, should be in a pretty good spot to guarantee a top 4 position. Don't you summoning the 7th Magician. plus switch, but even with all of these buffs, it isn't really worth any damage unless they summon another monster, and the Magician's Valkyria is the best one possible. Additionally, with the way this is set up, there were only 2 attributes in the graveyard, and even if Falco had the Widespread Viewing face down, Sword of Witch would have been destroyed instead of the Magician, which is incredible. Falco responds with their own Witch into Magician, and will clear out 2 monsters. However, due to the effect of Magician's Valkyria, the 7-Sword Witch is guaranteed to survive until the next turn. And this is going to make it pretty simple to summon out a new boss monster. Turn the Winnever, summoned, and will boost itself to 2400. Then, Goji is able to find the 7-Sword Magician and use the Witch's effect, who stuck around, to summon out Magician. And now, they are in a very strong spot. We know from a previous turn that the Widespread Viewing is not face down, so these attacks should be pretty safe. The final attack, 4-game, connects. And Manarchist and Tomato clash once again. Alright, Tomato opens up with a set 4. Of course, should we see a Hell Tuning Invasion, this is not going to matter. We see Essel, and they just find a low-level monster. Nothing too crazy. And it seems that Manarchist has no boss monsters at all, forcing them to summon out a bunch of low levels and swing over. This is fine, all things considered. However, a Ghost Cyclone is going to destroy the guard and get an extra draw. Is it possible that they should have left a monster on board intentionally? I am not entirely sure. I mean, they've played each other so much, they must have known at this point that Tomato is on Cyclone. But giving Zone's Exile Road more cards to work with is always problematic as well. Hell Tuning Invasion, flipping up a lone Currybot, allowing Currybot to use the effect. This is almost certainly going to be a heavy metal line, as Invasion requires 2 monsters to use the effect. Heavy Metal absorbs Torna, and then beats over the Magician's Valkyria alongside 2 face-down monsters. That is a pretty reasonable way to do it. Barring a Shield and Sword drop, Tomato Swords is not going to be able to find lethal this turn. And that gives Manarchist the chance to do a Shadow Buyer plus Invasion lethal on a future turn, which summons Magician. And another good thing I haven't mentioned about this engine, the Kobold is a fire attribute monster. A lot of players are on just a lone fire golem in the more dedicated spellcaster variant builds, whereas this has an actually good fire type monster. The other card you can consider is Thunder Gazelle, which can occasionally provide additional piercing reach. We see a monster reincarnation, grabbing back, almost certainly going to be the Heavy Metal. And here comes the next copy of Heavy Metal, which is able to swing in for lethal here. $2,900 is just over the required amount. Let's go ahead and take a look at the room. Paco only gained 900 points, but 4,900 should be safe. There are only around 15 minutes remaining. And the 5th place player is currently at 3,600 and would need to win 2 more times in order to top. And Falco is up first. This is currently the only match going on. Almost Manicus and Tomato have queued again. At this point, they might be the only players playing. All the players in the top 4 are probably trying to hold onto their position. And a lot of the players near the bottom of the bracket are probably realizing that they don't have a chance and have stopped queuing. For example, Sora has not been playing a game in quite some time, though I think they did give up a little bit prematurely. We see Tornado Windweaver swing in for just a little bit of damage. Barrier not going to stop the attack from the dealer. And Echo's down to 1,100 life. Mystic Dealer filtering, but we're almost certainly here to see the Tornado Windweavers flip up cards. With both monsters flip face up, that is game. And there are no tables. As expected, the players have largely stopped queuing in the room. It looks like our top 4 is just about decided. If Falco gets another win, they could sneak into 4th place with enough of a gain. But Tomato and Marcus, fighting each other so many times, are doomed to be stuck kind of right in the middle against each other. And even another win by Tomato may not secure them a position in the top cut. It looks like Manicus has queued into Echo, so we might as well see how that's going. Heavy Metal flipping up, or Heavy Metal destroying the Femtron before Reset Runner goes down. Echo finds Red Medicine, but without clearing out the Heavy Metal. They are in a fair amount of danger. even without a boss monster. This could represent lethal if Echo's monster has under 1200 defense, but with the invasion added to hand, they now have essentially a guaranteed lethal. Invasion onto the board, destroying the Igdrago, and an uncontested direct attack ends the game. And once again, there are no tables to spectate. I think we are probably going to go ahead and take a short break. The rooms have just about ended, but there are still technically 10 minutes if any of our duelists want to play. So we are going to go on break. We will be back at in 10 minutes. Feel free to go stretch your legs, take a bathroom break, get a snack, drink some water, and we will see you all in 10 minutes for Top Cut. And we are back. The point battle has concluded. And our top 4 players. Manarchus sneaks in over Fako at the last minute. Let's go ahead and ping our top 4. And Paco versus Gonchi. So, during the point battle portion of the event, players are able to use any deck they want and make any modifications they want as they go. However, in the top cut, our top 4 players are going to each bring a single deck, and we'll be playing best of 3 single elimination knockout style event. Let's go ahead and make a new duel room. That way we can go ahead and watch these games. Room capacity is up. Room type is casual. The point battle is over, but not the whole tournament. Let me go ahead and get the room code. Wow, that is impressive. We managed to find a 4-digit room code. Alright, Undernoxo and Manarchus have both submitted lists, so once they join the room, they can begin. Tomato says they won seconds after the time limit and could have broken into the top 4. Much like Manarchus last week, Tomato has been stopped by Pegasus's VCR. Sorry, Tomato Boy. But you simply ran out of time. And now your grandpa's soul is mine. Gonchi, you need to send me a deck list. And then you can start playing against Paco. It's not a time limit thing, I just need the deck submitted before the match can begin. In Top Cut, you're not allowed to change the deck anymore. Alright, let's go ahead and spectate game number 1. The timer is a formidable enemy indeed. Who's that one guy, though? On the ladder. I'm trying to remember is it like Eric? The bot player. Eric Shun. Truly my greatest foe. Oh, and we see a Essel milling of the Widespread Ruin. That is not a great start, but they do have a Piercing Samurai to try swinging in for some damage. Trigger Drago against an empty board. Will they run into Widespread Ruin, or are they simply going to deal 4,000 damage on the first turn? We see the Shadow Buyer taking full damage. Trigger Drago for 26. Recital can't help you if the piercing monsters attack first. Manarchus keeps 1 monster on board. we see a Shadow Buyer turn. Heavy Metal would be a little bit awkward since the Shadow Buyer would be forced to crash into the Piercing Samurai, but Invasion works out quite well, getting in for 3,500. That said, Manarchus is down to just 2,200 life points, and they do have 2 monsters on board. A Shield and Sword could end this game. And there are now no trap cards to protect them. Duckbill is grabbing a Trigger Drago. Fortunately for Manarchus, they managed to keep a card in hand, so a lone Trigger Drago is not going to be enough. Duckbill fails to use the effect. Stormbolt Destroyer, reviving a monster instead. This is still 300 plus, wait. No, not quite lethal. A Talismanic Seal Array could seal the deal though. Battle Phase. 800, 300. But only 2,500 life points left for our Thunder Bro. A Heavy Metal ends the game. We see the Kobold, and Hell-Tuning Invasion is activated. All they can hope for is that it is an invasion instead, leaving them with 200 life points. But they are not so lucky. Heavy Metal is here, and is swinging in for nearly 3,500. Taking the first game. Let's go ahead and take a quick look over at our other match of the top 4. Paco versus Gonchi. I know several of the target players are watching the stream, so in all fairness, I want to spectate both games so any advantage gained via looking at the stream is minimized. We see a set 3 pass into a 4th monster. Presumably, this is going to be something like a Torna or Witch. Dragonic Slayer coming down onto the field, alongside a Twinus Dragon who is going to be able to attack twice. Twinus Dragon discarding the Shield and Sword though. Perhaps it isn't that useful against a 7's Axel Road deck. They do run cards like Light Sorcerer of Sanctity with 0 defense, but their main boss monsters all have at least 1,000. Clearing the board is a respectable choice. Gonchi finds only a Torna. And Phoenix Dragon is bringing the Slayer right back. And the Twinus Dragon is sticking around. Slayer's going to be able to pop one of the 2 back row. And let's see if it is a good one. The Sword and Shield would have worked against any of these monsters on board. Every single one has 0 defense. But when combined with the Talismanic Seal Array, it would have only been a blank, rather than destroying the monster. Widespread Ruin is definitely the better card to have kept in this situation, removing the Slayer from the board. Shield and Sword on the next turn. Can Gonchi find a full 6,000 line? They're going to need Witch and Magician. Magician is going to need to get up to 3,600. That is 5 unique elements, but they only have 4. Had they found a Mystic... Oh wait, I forgot about the extra from the effect, which gains an extra 400 attack when it summons Magician and ends the game. I was only counting it as a 2,400 attack point monster. Unfortunately, Strike Force, I do not know a lot about baseball. Are you saying like I had an accurate read on what was in your hand? We see a set 3, that is actually a set 5. One of those monsters face down is a boss monster, but it is getting flipped up by Invasion and destroyed anyway. Depending on the Thunder build, I think keeping a Stormbolt Destroyer in hand would make sense if you already have the late monsters, but I can see with the Duckbills, you really don't want to brick. And getting rid of the boss monster works just as well, though it does reduce your ability to summon out a double boss board potentially. Stormbolt Destroyer and Arching Soldier is quite a powerful combination. They accurately choose to switch the Invasion to defense mode. It now only blocks 1500 attack rather than 1600 by staying face up. And they get in for 1900 plus 2400. However, are they going to be able to clear through 3 back row? We see a Recital. And unfortunately, it looks like they didn't find another boss monster. Or maybe they are simply keeping them in hand for later. Widespread Ruin is going to destroy Stormbolt Destroyer and leaves CS's board in a relatively mundane state, unable to push in for any damage. Hell-Shooting Invasion into the Invasion number 2, going in for 2300, barring any trap card. And now we are down to what is probably going to be the decisive turn of the game. Do they have another boss monster? If so, they win. But they don't even need it. Shield and Sword is good enough. A 0 defense Invasion with no back row is game. Let's take a look at the scores. Looks like Manicus has finished 2, but Paco is still in the second game. And it looks like Paco is going up first. They are going to need to win this game to reach a game 3. 4 sets is always a solid start. And you never know if they have a boss monster or another level monster in their hand. A Witch coming out this early is a little bit unfortunate for Gonchi. Obviously, keeping those cards around for later, when you can actually go ahead and get the Magician or any damage in, is typically going to be superior. But perhaps they already have a second copy ready in their hand. We see the Shield and Sword, which is going to debuff the Light Sorcerer. But it is also buffing the Magician's Valkyria, and forcing Paco to have a high-level monster to clear anything. Dragius, though, plus a Gravity Press Dragon. Now, if the card that I kept in hand last turn was Gravity Press Dragon, I actually do kind of disagree with this play. And I would have set it down along with the rest of them. But if they drew into the Dragius does make sense to keep in hand, as would any of the other cards they had. In any case, another round of Dragius could end this game, and Dragonic Slayer is going to be searching for that widespread ruin. Unfortunately, it hits a magical stream. Twin-Edged Dragon and Dragius represent a total of 5 attacks on the board, and Dragius' first hit goes through. And that is game. Both of these matches are going into a game 3. I'm glad you had a good time, Echo. We hold it again next week at the same time. So if you had fun, I definitely recommend joining again. Though actually I did say at the same time, but I know we have had a couple of players asked to start a little bit later. So we might start looking into that. And that's going to help the turnout. Having a consistent time obviously means people know when it's happening. But if there's a time that works better for more people, we do want to do that, as we obviously want as many players as possible. Heavy Metal coming in, destroying the Duckbill, and Essel finds an Invasion off the top. Incredible. Recital going to keep their own Essel on the board. A shield and sword is huge here. Stormbolt Destroyer. However, they aren't actually going to be able to find a lethal, I don't think. The 2-0 attack monsters are not quite enough, as this deck has a really tough time getting any of their monsters above 3,000. They are good at debuffing, not at buffing. Mana goes down to just 800. We see a Shadow Buyer, and it looks to me like they could be setting up a heavy metal play. Here comes Royal Rebels Heavy Metal, gaining 1900 by destroying the Arching Soldier, and an immunity to Widespread Ruin. But is this going to be enough? They destroy Stormbolt Destroyer. They're considering a trap, but they did gain 1900. A Sword and Shield is not enough. Call of the Earthbound is a solid choice. Redirecting the attack, they take a little bit more damage, but their Stormbolt Destroyer is safe. And now, any debuff, any boss monster, should be ending this game. Here it comes, Stormbolt Destroyer number 2. And with that, the heavy metal is getting debuffed. Lightning Trigger. There can only be one trap card. And even if you switch it to defense mode, you have the Piercing Samurai to get in for lethal through a Widespread Ruin. But even if you can stop the attack with a King's Majesty, these Stormbolt Destroyers can finish the job by destroying heavy metal and swinging in directly. Manarchist with a top 4 finish. Which means Sias is going into the finals. Let's go ahead and find our second finalist here. Will Dragonic Resonance make a push? Or will the 7-Sword Magician clear the day? Yuga versus Luke. On this side of the table, we have a classic anime matchup. And both players are starting off pretty passively. However, that is a ton of leverage for Gonchi, who is going to be able to destroy the Widespread Ruin, activate Torna, summon a 7-Sword Magician, and start pushing in for damage. And even a Magician's Valkyria too. This is 1800, and Paco is down their most powerful back row. We see a Slugger, but there is no pitcher. They are forced to use a Triad Drago and prematurely activate their skill. Dragonic Slayer is going to destroy Gonchi's Widespread Ruin as well. They managed to clear the 2 important monsters here, but with no back row and a life point disadvantage, and it being over turn 4, we could be seeing a double 7-Sword Magician turn. 7-Sword Mage is summoned instead, and that is still incredibly threatening, unless Riv can find a lethal this turn. 1300 life points is going to be enough, where any reasonable play from Gonchi ends the duel. We see a Talismanic Seal Array. I think you have to destroy the Mage and the Magician. But this isn't going to be enough. Any 1600 monster finds a Magician. A Magician boosts high enough to clear Dragias. I mean, even a Light Sorcerer of Sanctity or 2 could do it. We see the Witch, and the game is over. Witch beats Dragias, and the Light Sorcerer on board is already lethal. But they show off, activate the 7 sorcery, bring in the Magician, and go in for as much damage as possible. Summons their magician, takes down Dragius. And Gonchi moves on to the finals. And that means it is time for Gonchi versus Seos. And they are ready to battle. We'll hop in to spectate once the match begins. And here we go. Alright, Thunder versus 7th Axel Road. 7th Axel Road has been taking down tournaments left and right, but Thunder has also been a consistent presence in the metagame. Interestingly, we have a wide variety of decks being represented, but there are also decks that aren't seeing a ton of play. Decks like Magnum Overload seem to have fallen off, but I don't think that has anything to do with their viability as much as player preference. Obviously, Royal Rebels are still in contention for the #1 deck slot, as Harpies should be as well. But we don't really see them dominating the tournament scene here. When we only have like 10 players, the metagame is going to largely revolve around what they find interesting. There are a ton of viable decks. And there are only so many players. Welcome, Whistling Bird. Tournament is in the finals. It was a few less people than usual. But hopefully the events will grow in time. I don't know how we can get the word out there more. I guess, I don't know if people are just less interested than in the Quantum and Harrier events, or if maybe they just put on a better show, or maybe they just draw speed duel players that don't really care about Rush that much. Shield Sword activated. Trigger Drago down to 15. Yeah, and Paco is factually correct. They have gotten top 4 into Get Bodied several times. Alright, we see the Witch, but there was a Magician milled. So they are down at least 1. Looks like they don't have it. Talismanic Seal Array going to bring down the Trigger Drago to just 100 life. But they do put back Witch, Magician, and Mage. All incredible cards to have for later. Swinging in for 2300, and it connects. A Recital would be good here to force a crash of the Essels, but they have no back row at all. These 2 face down cards hopefully are going to do something for them this turn. With 2100 life points, a Magician plus Witch combo on a future turn could easily wipe out the remaining life. And there is no way for the Thunder deck to deal 6,000 from a board state like this. They are fighting from a huge deficit, but things are not over just yet. we see a shield and sword, debuffing the witch. And then Talismanic Seal Array. Could it be that they don't have any high-level monsters and are debuffing the Valkyria? That appears like it very well could be the case. They summon out a 1500 and another one, getting ready to clear the Valkyria plus Witch. They have a third back row. So, will this be enough to hold off the push? 3 face down cards. Sword and Shield is gone. Widespread Ruin is still around. Sword and Shield wouldn't do anything as these Angry Coilfish both are 0 defense monsters. We see Seven's Axel Road, but will we see a search? We do not. 2 Light Sorcerers. Torn of the Windweaver, switching one of the Angry Coilfish into defense mode. Going for a tried and true grind game. Torna swings in. Widespread Ruin is going to eat it. Will they choose to clear the Angry Coilfish or leave them with a monster on board? They do choose to clear, but a recital will stop the push, keeping the resource for later. We see a Duckbill, which is going to be able to recycle a boss monster if wanted, but they choose not to grab the Trigger Drago. Stormbolt Destroyer, summoning its 1500 counterpart to the field. Arching Soldier as well. Not grabbing the Trigger Drago is pretty interesting here. Is going wider actually the right play? A 3900 700 Magician can swing into Angry Coilfish for game, but the Widespread Ruin is going to remove the Stormbolt Destroyer, and having 2 monsters on board is probably a blessing now. Let's take a look. We've seen a Recital and a Widespread Ruin. In order to stop a 3900 700 Magician from swinging over this Angler Coilfish for game, they're going to need a Call of the Earthbound. But even swinging into the Arching Soldier is going to be 2,000 damage. And the Witch would finish off the Coilfish for game there. We see a Magical Stream and 2 low-level monsters into the 700 Magician. And are all attributes accounted for? We have yet to see a Mystic Dealer, but it is from the top of the deck. And that is game number 1. Seven's Axel Road. Up a game in the finals. Will it win another tournament and potentially secure its place in people's minds as one of the best decks in the game? We see a tribute set on turn 1. Probably has another boss monster in hand and doesn't want to brick. We see an Angler Coilfish coming down. Will they have the Piercing Samurai? And they do. Will they choose to guarantee the clear over the tribute set boss monster? Or will they aim for a potential 0 defense monster like Light Sorcerer at the risk of running into a strange cat? And they do hit the cat, taking 200 damage. Torna is down. They choose to clear out the cat rather than whatever the set monster is. But the set monster could be something like a Light Sorcerer of Sanctity, whereas Strange Cat is always going to be a 0 defense monster, or 0 attack monster. I feel destroying the face down was probably the better play, but in this case it is a mage who isn't going to do very much. Widespread Ruin destroyed by the Magical Stream. And as long as they establish a decent board, I would put 7's Axel Road as having the advantage here. We see a witch. Do they have the magician? And here comes 7's Road Magician. Only 2 monsters on board, not going to be a full clear. Which one do they choose to get rid of? Presumably the Arching Soldier, the 400 life points is not worth as much as having no monsters on their board that are able to clear. The 7's Road Witch goes back down to 1600, and you don't really want the Arching Soldier lingering around and getting a free bop. Forcing them to find 2 different boss monsters is definitely the play. Duckbill coming down and reviving the Stormbolt Destroyer. And with already having a monster on board from the previous turn, this is more than enough to potentially lead into a double boss board with extras. 2500 is just safe enough, where a 1500 monster isn't going to lose immediately to a 7's Road Magician. But if it is a Witch Magician combo, it would still be a difficult situation. Lightning Trigger. Alright, seems like a reasonable sequence. And Stormbolt Destroyer getting in for 3,400 damage. Welcome. ICK. The point battle is going pretty well. This is the final, so you've caught us right near the end of the stream. But I would say it has been pretty interesting to see the decks players are using change week to week. Seven's Axel Road activating the effect. And they do search out a magician. This is probably game. The witch represents 400 damage, so 2100. And then a 3900 magician is indeed going to be strong enough. Even without that talismanic seal array, it would have been a 1500 plus 9 is 2100 plus 400. It was an exact lethal push. Unless I'm bad at math. Which is entirely possible. It might have actually been a little bit more. I think it was 300 over. And that is another win for 7's Axel Road, which I believe puts us at a 2-0 victory for Gonchi. Congratulations on the victory. 7's Axel Road takes a spot, and Gonchi finally claims a tournament win. A lot of players had been speculating it was only a matter of time until they did so. So, once again, congratulations, and thank you everyone who tuned in. That is going to be all for today. But I will go ahead and see if there is anyone to raid over on Twitch. There aren't usually any other Rush streamers, but we might as well confirm that. See if I recognize any of these people. Alright, and looks like there is indeed no rush happening. So that is going to be all.